morning, everyone. Good morning to our third episode of Milligenics. We are now discussing ways of how to best address some of the challenges that we are now facing with the pandemic. And one of the challenges that Master Roshi and I thought is consistent with many folks right now is the lack of employment. Many folks have lost their jobs in the last few months, and it has become really difficult for these folks to get back on track. Just prior to the pandemic, it was difficult itself. But now, with the formula of adding the pandemic to this formula, it just adds a little bit more stress. And we thought it would be really necessary, or at least helpful for most folks, to have an opportunity of how to reclaim their employment status by exercising some methods that can be helpful for them. And this is why last week we decided to go ahead and talk about resume. And today we're going to discuss about interviews. But before we move forward, a little bit about myself. I have over 10 years working in various backgrounds as a manager. Of course, before I was a manager, I did clerical roles, and I did many different um, I explored in different employment opportunities, lots of blue collar work and lots of white collar work as well. So I have learned to navigate both specs. And I believe that with those 10 years of managerial experience, complemented now with my last 10 years of working in as a career coach, where I've been able to help folks address some triggers and some barriers that may have been created due to the lack of employment. By bringing that forth and bringing that forward, I think can be a beneficial concept to include in um, into their job search campaign. Um, by working right now in the last few years with various folks, men and women from different backgrounds and different ages, one of the key concepts that I noticed that is sort of key uh, or consistent with most individuals that are unemployed is fear. And we're going to try to see how we can help you to address some of those fears. And I understand, losing employment and staying unemployed for a long period of time can add a high sense of anxiety. And when people are doing job search, many times they reveal that anxiety. And when they're doing their resume, they reveal that anxiety as well. And ultimately, they reveal this anxiety during the interview and not realizing that it's not really anxiety, it is excitement. But because we have now been programmed where we think yes and no, good and bad, we forget all the gray areas in between. So excitement is one of those key emotions that I think that we can implement into our job searching role to help us avoid being fearful. So I'm hoping that by having our discussion today, Master Roshi and I can create some tips and some solutions that can help you launch yourself in the career path that you most likely prefer. Um, so enough about me. I want to hand it over to my very good friend, Master Roshi.
Thank you, Sensei. So, I want to kind of give a little bit more background as to who we are. But of course, you've accumulated a lot of life experience along the way, a lot of career experience, more than I have, right? And the population that you serve is the population that you live with, right? A lot of times we have people that they work so far away from the people that they serve or work with that they can't relate. So we're both from the Bronx, right? That's our upbringing for the better part of our lives. I've moved away from the Bronx for the sake of my family, trying to provide a better life for them. And I've done that in the past 6 to 7 years. Sensei, you're still in the Bronx, but at some point I know you're going to want to depart. But in the meantime, we've worked together and we've helped our community, elevate as much as possible. And it's still a struggle. There's just so much work still to be done, as you know, and I know. I you know, kind of confer with you a lot of times, just trying to find out what's going on in the Bronx. And, my life is so different now, than it was before. But I still have my struggles and I haven't forgotten where we come from. Right. And I think that's the most important thing. And that's what we're trying to do here is we're trying to help people that need help, right? To get through this time that is one of the most difficult, we've ever experienced. We have some of the highest unemployment we've ever seen. And it's changed the dynamic of work. It's changed the dynamic of life. And that's what we're here today to discuss. And we're going to go into interviewing, right? I've come across a lot of stuff where on LinkedIn, where people who have a good skill set, who have a good resume and all those things, and they just can't get past the interview. They can't land that job. And so now we've worked with, and you still work with, a population that has a lot of strikes against them. And how do you get through that? We're gonna discuss some examples primarily from you, Sensei, because you do this on a regular basis. I don't do this anymore as much as you do, but because I work in Georgia, I work in Atlanta, and I work for a big firm, and I see the politics every day of what we do. So I can understand from the inside, right? What it's like for people to come through the doors, right? You're trying to get people through the door. I'm on the other side of that door already. And so are you in a way, right? Because you already have a job and I have a job. So how do we do that? that's the question that we're trying to figure out today, right, Sensei? So
Yes.
let me know. Yeah, go ahead. Go and
Yeah.
get into it.
Okay. So let's dive into it. How do we prepare for an interview? Um, an interview is a planned and structured conversation to help the employer uh, determine whether you are the right fit for the job. But in addition to that, we need to understand that it is also your opportunity to see whether the employer is right for you. I remember walking into a company many years ago, and I realized that once I got there, it wasn't the right fit. And because of it, I didn't give myself, I didn't offer myself I didn't offer my full potential to the employer because I realized this is not the place to be. And in today's times, the wonderful thing about it is that due to the internet, we can find ways of knowing whether this is the right, not just to research not to just to research the company to let the employer know what kind of candidate you can be by letting them know that you're able to do the research, but also understanding whether this is the company that you want to spend some time with and help them continue to build their mission. The company that I went to, just to give you a quick example, it was a law firm. This is many years ago, before we had the internet, and the law firm represented the tobacco industry. And the moment I walked into that company, I smelled cigarettes. In those days, people were allowed to smoke cigarettes in conference rooms, and I guess that smell sort of lingered into the hallways and even in the reception area. And another thing that they had is they had a sample cigarette packs, like 10 in a pack, the soft packs, and they were laid out in the reception area. And I just knew that this was not the place, this was not the company that I wanted to grow with. So I didn't give myself my full potential. But today you have those kind of opportunities where you can see whether this is the right fit. Masaroshi, have you ever encountered anything similar to this in your quest for employment?
That's a really good question. I'd have to think about that. But what I want to say about what you said um, really strikes with me because, you know, in the beginning, you said that when you're interviewing, it's an opportunity for you to interview the company, but it's also an opportunity for the company to interview you. And most times, we're eager to go to an interview, right? I mean, for a host of reasons that we'll get into. But I think you kind of stood your ground, right? And you said, well, these guys are looking at me, but I'm looking at them and I kind of don't like what I see, right? And so, sometimes we have a little bit of bargaining power, right? Where we could say, well, maybe this is not the place for me, maybe I could find somewhere else to kind of go.
So, right now, these are very difficult times. Employers have a wealth of candidates that are now seeking employment, and because of it, they get very choosy.
Hmm.
Uh, and many, when you really think about it, most transitional jobs, they have very similar skills, uh, and that's what you need to focus on: the similar skills. If you were working in a blue collar environment and you went to school and now you wanted to migrate to a white collar environment, uh, you need to understand what are the type of skill sets that you can move, you can transfer from one place to another. And we discussed that last week when we were creating, when we were talking about creating the resume. So for now, I would probably say don't be too picky.
That's
These
exactly what I
are
was going to say. Hmm. Because I think millennials, they have had a lot of stuff handed to them. They haven't had as much of a struggle as maybe you did when you were growing up. I know I've had some struggles, but probably nothing compared to some of the stuff that you've told me from some of the stories I've heard, right? You've had to fight your way up, you know. Um, a lot of people have, maybe from your generation. Um, and that's exactly what I was gonna say is you can't be too picky, especially right now. You just gotta find something that's gonna help you to propel yourself forward, to another position. It may not be exactly what you want, but it'll be something for now, right? And I know that's one of the things you always tell me. But I actually do remember an example in terms of my values that changed.
Mhm.
Before I came to Atlanta, I had an opportunity, two opportunities actually. And at the time, I had a family, just starting out my family, and I had an opportunity to work for one company in New York, but that was the only office that they had was in New York, but all their stuff was high tech, right? And that caught my eye, right? Because I have a real passion for IT. But on the other hand, there was another company that had offices all around the world, and my wife told me, it's probably better for us to go with the other company that has all these offices because I could potentially move and transfer to another one of their offices. And at the time we were looking to move to Atlanta, Georgia. So everything just happened to work out. And that was something that had to align with my values. Yes, this other company, I don't remember if they were going to pay me more, but they were smaller and there was maybe potential to grow there, but I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know if I was going to go with this other company that had all these other offices and if that was going to work, right? If I was going to get a transfer, but hopefully it did. So I think you got to go with, most times, kind of go with your gut, and see where it takes you. But I think sometimes you do have to swallow that humble pie, right? and
Right.
just kind of just hold out, on those kind of things. But going back to what you were saying about, you know, these sort of blue collar to white collar jobs, and then having the education, behind you, and then trying to get those jobs. Talk to me a little bit more about that. Like, can you give me some examples or things that, in your mind you've done or maybe other people you've seen do along what you're trying to say? If you could just expand on that.
Oh, absolutely. One of those um, Well, some of those transferable skills is reliability, dependability, great work ethic, customer service, communications, your ability to work well under pressure. These are all transferable skills, and these are the kind of skill sets that are utilized basically by everyone in today's economy. Um, I worked in the manufacturing industry, Master Roshi, and I don't want to age myself too much, but I actually worked in the manufacturing industry when I was a young teenager, and in the manufacturing industry, we didn't have to get along. It didn't matter. I did one task all day, every day. The kind of a company that I was with, it was a belt factory. So all we did was belts, many various type of belts. But once you got that one task, that's all you did. So some of my tasks that I did was punch holes into the belt, and that's what I did all day long. So I didn't have to collaborate uh, with my fellow coworkers in how to create a solution to a problem. All I did was punch 5 holes into a belt. That's it. Then I pass it on to the next person. That person put a buckle into it. Then it went on to another person, and they actually stitched the buckle to it. And that's what we did. So I didn't have to get along with the person before me. I didn't have to get along with the person after me. All we had to do is just do this mindless task over and over and over again. But today, that's not the economy that we work with. The economy that we work with is individuals that are more rounded, uh, a little bit more sophisticated, a little bit more, I guess a little bit more educated, because we have to be able to exercise uh, those basic human skills, which is, working well with others. So the person that's going to be able to get the job quicker is the one that displays those kind of skill sets, not the one that talks about those kind of skill sets. I'm not sure if you know what I'm talking about, but let's just say, one of the things that I used to see when I used to hire people is that they would send me a resume telling me that they were high energy, and they could work well under pressure. And the moment I see them in the reception area, they're falling asleep, and some of them looked a bit agitated because I made them wait 5 or 10 minutes. Have you ever come across anything like this, Master Roshi, in your experience, or either working with others, or maybe some stories that people may have shared with you regarding this?
I have, but before we get into that, I think this is a good transition point because I think what we need to sort of focus on here, right, is that in the past, before this whole COVID thing happened, right, we've had examples of people doing these sort of things, right, when they come to the interview, but now it's all virtual, right? I could give you a quick example. I remember when I was recruiting at the small company, and I used to have people come in late. I had one guy. I remember this. His interview was supposed to be at, like, I think 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, or it might have been a lady, and she showed up at 9 in the morning, right? And I did the courtesy of interviewing that person, but you're coming in at the wrong time. I could be doing other things. You're putting me at an inconvenience, while I'm trying to accommodate you, and that's just putting a bad foot forward, right? There's no way you'll be able to come back, after doing something like that. And those examples seem so basic and easy, but sometimes it just goes over people's heads. And I think that's when me and you get so frustrated, about the easiest things that people fail to miss, right? So moving away from that, because I think what we need to address here is the fact that we're having a lot of people doing virtual interviews, right? So I want to talk about some of the things that I've seen, and then I want you to jump in and let me know. But some things I haven't necessarily seen people do in terms of where I work, but I can almost imagine that these things happen, right? So one of the things, and maybe you've seen this because your population is a little bit different than mine. I'm dealing with like attorneys and things like that. But one thing is like you said, reliability, right? So making sure the technology that you're using is reliable before you do that interview, making sure your computer is updated, to the latest and greatest stuff, so that when you're interviewing, it doesn't have to reboot, in the middle of an interview because it has to be updated. So that's one example I could give. Another one I want to talk about is being late. You know, to me, it's almost impossible now to be late to an interview, right? You don't have to commute, you know, but I can imagine that people are still doing that. One of the things that I am, it's almost instilled in me now, right? Because of what I do, and the people that I support is we have to set things up early and test things out early, right? So obviously, now what you want to do is before you have that interview, you want to make sure your computers, you're logged in to that meeting 15 minutes early at the very least, right? I think that's a good, sign. It's just a good sort of thing to do. And making sure that everything works, right? You want to make sure everything works so you don't have no problems with your audio, with your video. That's part of the preparation, right? And there's a host of things that we can get into, Sensei, in terms of the preparation, because that's the key ingredient to all of this, right? Whether it's virtual or not, you want to make sure you're prepared for your interview. So tell me about some of the things you've seen lately, right? With your students going off into interviews, and maybe some positive things. I know we like to sometimes kind of reflect on the negative because it's so easy to sort of get into. But tell me some positive, negative things you've seen, and just some things that maybe you think would be helpful for the audience to do now that we're in this virtual world more and more.
You know, so the art of the interview has certainly changed, absolutely, because of this virtual environment that we are now living in. But there are still some basic elements that are still in place, and that is not what you said. You can't be late, okay? Not especially for a virtual environment. How can you be late? You're late by taking the Uber from your bedroom to your living room? Is that why there was traffic? No, there was a lack of preparation, because that's what that's telling me. And like you said, give yourself 15 minutes. Today, when you and I were prepping, we realized that my computer wasn't working. Well, it is working, but the audio was not working. And we tried troubleshooting it. We're looking into starting at a particular time promptly. And we got together about 15 minutes before, just in case. And good thing
Hmm.
that we did. And we tried troubleshooting it, and we couldn't figure it out. And now what we decided to do is let's go with the phone. And by having a combination of my phone, where I can use it for my audio, and having my computer to use it for my video, we're now here. So these are the kind of things that sometimes if by giving yourself a little bit more time, you can be ready for. One of the key components that I believe that can be sort of like that can download a virus into the employer's mind is that the moment I am dealing with you, there are hiccups. And once I see that there are hiccups, before there's a compensation attached to it, I may not be too interested in hiring you because I don't want to compensate you with hiccups. So the whole interview process, the whole resume, the whole everything has to be seamless so that I can see you as the kind of valuable person to be working in my company. And the more hiccups you have, and I love it when people say, it's not my fault, because what happened today was not my fault. It really wasn't. The computer the computer's audio didn't work. That's not my fault. But you can't walk around life just saying that nothing that happens to you is not your fault. It really isn't. But what is your fault is how you deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
That is when it becomes your fault. And if you don't know how to prep properly, then at that moment, it is your fault. Now, the wonderful thing about life, Master Roshi, is that we really can change things. All right. We can change things, meaning that if today I lost an opportunity for employment due to not being able to be more proactive and give myself more time to fix the issue, or at least address the issue or troubleshoot the issue, maybe next time I should. And that's the way you need to look at the whole interview process. You know, many folks, they think that just landing on one interview, going to one interview, you're going to land the perfect opportunity. No. It takes several times because you need to perfect that craft. And once, like I said earlier, once you perfect the craft, you'll get hired and you won't use it again until you're ready to perfect that craft again in the next couple of years. You yourself have moved on from one company to another in the last few years. And every time you have to go through this process, I'm sure you had to learn something new every single time. You didn't just go into it knowing. You went into it unknowing and then knowing as you continue to repeat this. Is that something that I don't know, is that something that you have encountered, Masaroshi?
Yeah, I don't think anybody likes interviewing, you know. I mean, if you do, I think there's something wrong with you. You know, nobody likes it. It's like going to the dentist, you know, but you have to brace yourself for what's coming. You have to prepare yourself, you know, you got to be on time for your appointment and things like that. Um, but other examples that I could think of, you know, is for example, maybe your computer dying, right, while you're in the middle of the interview. So you want to make sure that your computer is fully charged or plugged in. You know, I've had instances of that happening to my coworkers. You know, we've got these very important meetings, and you know, I remember, oh my goodness, I remember one time, man, we had the chief operating officer, and it was a big, you know, meeting with all the top, you know, people, and the battery on the computer said it was dying, right? And it was plugged in, you know, and he got a message saying that, you know, there was just something wrong with the battery. And after the meeting was over, you know, everything ran well. Um, we had to go to, I think it was Lenovo, right, and figure out what, because you know he's a very smart guy, and we had to figure out, you know, was there something really wrong with this battery? So you've got people out there that are very, you know, in Spanish I would say maniático, you know, that are very just, you know, man, you know, just maniatic, you know, when it comes to certain things. But I would say that, yeah, you know, preparation is the best thing that's always going to save you. You know, making sure that that computer is charged. Other things that I could think of, right? You know, now that we're in this virtual world, that I think could help people is, you know, like let's say you're in graphic design, you've got these virtual backgrounds that you can do in Zoom and, you know, all these other programs. What if you were about to go on an interview and, you know, you had to show them your work, right? What if you created a really cool virtual background using some graphic design tools that could give you the edge that you need, you know, in a meeting, right? So these are some of the things that I would sort of tell people to start thinking a little bit more about, be a little bit more creative, to set yourself apart from the competition. I read so many comments on LinkedIn about people that have a hard time trying to get a job right now, and they have the qualifications, right? But they just can't get through that interview process for whatever reason. You know, the HR is not going to tell you what you did wrong. You know, why didn't you match up with the qualifications? And that's where you have to do a lot of self reflection uh, during those times. So, what are some things that you have done in terms of self reflection that you thought you could, you know, maybe, you know, you mentioned about an interview that you had before that you did poorly, right? But you knew that you did poorly, right? What about things that, you didn't realize until later that you could have done better, right? What are some of those things that maybe you encountered, Sensei, that you were like, man, I didn't get that. Why didn't I get that? And then you kind of keep questioning yourself, and then you finally figure it out, and that light bulb goes off in your head. Has that happened to you?
Oh, absolutely. Many times, and actually, I learned a lot about those things when I made the transition from, I guess, an associate or clerical to sort of like a assistant manager and manager, and then senior manager. Sort of like so because now that I was interviewing, I got to see many of the flaws that I myself reflected at a younger time. So actually, that transition has helped me tremendously understand myself more, and because of it, this is why I'm doing this, because the things that I learned on my own, the things that I learned through my mentors, is what I have accumulated throughout the years, and now I'm reflecting that with others. But the one thing that I remember, the number one thing that I was terrible at, and I don't understand why. And I guess maybe I guess I do, is that many times when you go into an interview, of course, you're highly excited. You're very excited. You're going to an interview and you're very excited. And because of it, you're unable to get to bed early because your mind is wandering. And you start watching TV for a very long time past your bedtime. And finally, when you say, I have to get to sleep because I need to be at this interview, you push yourself to go to sleep, and now it's very late at night. You toss and turn. You wake up in the morning earlier than you're supposed to. Now you're exhausted because the nervousness that you've had throughout the night, or the anxiety that you may have felt, and now you're going to the interview. And now in an interview, you're in a climate controlled environment, in a nice, comfortable chair, and you get to get drowsy. And it is not even 9 o'clock in the morning, and you're already displaying signs that it's difficult for you to stay up so early in the morning. And those are the kind of things. Actually, that was a perfect example of some of the flaws that I exhibited as I was pushing myself forward in my career. But the beautiful thing, Master Roshi, about the virtual environment is that I can cheat. I can have notes in front of me, even behind my screen, on the topics that I want to discuss, on the strengths that I want to exhibit, on the questions that I may want to ask, without looking like I had everything documented. So there are I wouldn't, maybe let's not say cheat, but to be more strategic towards the interview process. The entire process is preparation, and that's all they're looking at.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I had a lack of preparation. I should have gone to bed earlier, knowing that I had this earlier interview. I should have put more emphasis on my interview techniques, so I won't be so nervous. The key point of how you're able to address that fear is because it's the unknown. So if I would have done more mock interviews, if I would have done more, being more proactive about preparing myself, perhaps I wouldn't have been so anxious throughout the night. And I probably would have been a little bit more excited about how this opportunity is going to help me launch my career and propel myself forward as a professional. So those are the kind of things that we need to always keep in mind. The interviewer is looking for preparation, and what are you doing to do so? And the more you prepare, the less anxiety that you're going to feel. So the key, I think, to any successful interview is preparation. So you need to prep your package, and the package is you. Right. LinkedIn, resume, questions, attire, Everything is part of the package.
So Sensei, I wanna I wanna kind of cover two things here because I think the preparation is so key, and I think when you said practice, that just gave me like a flashback, to being where you're working at. So two things with the preparation thing. One is it's almost now a great blessing in a way that this has befallen upon us. So I think the preparation is so important, and I think the practice is probably the most important thing. So yes, I think you do look more natural when you don't have papers in front of you. But the other thing is that, this Zoom, this ability to do virtual meetings has almost to me, now that I'm thinking about it, and I just realized this, given us a great opportunity to practice even more, right? We can do like 10 Zooms a day, right? And we don't have to commute. We don't have to be in the same place, right? And this will be great feedback for me if we're having an interview, right? And then you can afterwards, you could do it with your friend, you could do it with your family member. I know those are some of the things that you've told people to do, right? But you want to do it with people that will give you constructive feedback, that are going to be able to help you, not say, "Oh, you did a great job." That does nothing for nobody. That helps nobody. I think in terms of the preparation also is, because we're doing things virtually now, you want to make sure that you're in a quiet environment. And that's hard for people. You've got kids, you could have a kid interrupt one of your meetings, we've seen this on the news, right? And so I think that's a challenge, trying to find a quiet time and a quiet place for most people. You might be bunched up with a bunch of different people in your household, and you may not get a quiet place to do that. So what are some places? I know it's difficult for us to go anywhere right now, but I know you've mentioned to me some places you've gone, to give yourself a quiet place. And I guess also a disclaimer, right? You want to let the interviewer know, hey, look, I'm sorry, I don't have a quiet place at home where I can interview. So please, um, I apologize in advance. If you could just understand, maybe I got to do this in the park. What are some places you can think of that people can do some of these interviews now?
You know, I remember when I was I know this may not be maybe not the best example, but I remember when I was going to school when I was younger, and my daughter was tiny. She was about 3 years old, 4 years old, and she needed my attention, and she demanded my attention. That's more like it, right? And so one of the things that I used to do in order to study was go in the closet with a with a headlamp and study. While I hear her outside the closet, Daddy, where are you? And I'm in the closet, trying to get as much information as possible. Another thing that perhaps folks can do is letting your loved ones know
Mm,
that this is important to you. Uh, let your husband know that, hey, can you take care of the kids for the next 2 3 hours or next hour or the next
right.
half hour, whatever it is, while I do this? Because by you helping me do this, this is how our life might improve.
Hmm.
So this is an investment. So maybe having the support of your husband, your wife, maybe your older children. Uh, if you have brothers and sisters, that maybe for that day they can take care of your children. That can also perhaps be beneficial. I don't recommend to go into the street because that's going to be a lot more noises unless you're in a very rural area or suburban environment that is very quiet, and maybe you can do it in your backyard or something along those lines. But other than that, I think that by asking your loved ones for some support might be beneficial in order to have that quiet time that you need so that you can both focus on each other. Uh, you know, perhaps one of your, you know, part of your selling key points, your key selling points was ability to stay focused.
Hmm.
And the last thing you want to do is unable to stay focused during the interview. Remember, there can be no hiccups. Hiccups need to be eliminated. So what I like to do is become obsessed. And I tell this to everyone. I am obsessed. I become obsessed with quality work. And the reason why I become obsessed with quality work is because I am a human being and I will make mistakes anyway. So even when I'm obsessed with quality work, I still make mistakes. But at least they're minimized as opposed to if I wasn't obsessed with quality work, I'll just let you know that's how things are and that's how I am. And you know, hey, it's no big deal. And that is not what we do. Okay. We need to become obsessed, making sure that we prepare and tweak whatever we need to do to give our best presentation. You know, one of the, you know, it's funny that you mentioned this whole environment. I was in the middle of doing a class some months back in this virtual environment,
Okay.
and they were doing construction outside my building,
I remember. Yeah.
and and the drilling. Oh my God, the drilling that was going on. It was terrible. I couldn't hear myself think. So what did I do? I early in the morning, I took my equipment and I did my class in the park.
Yeah.
And it was early in the morning. This is before people were out, and I was able to do a class and until half day where it started raining. But because it started raining, I was able to come home, and those folks doing the drilling were not here. So then I was able to continue and finish for the rest of the day.
So
But
Sensei, I think that's so important right there, and I wanna emphasize that point that you took the initiative there, right, on your own to go and say, "Look, I need a quiet place right now. I can't wait. This, my meeting with my students is so important. I need to get away." And I think a lot of times, one of the problems I've seen is that people tend to procrastinate, you know, and hope that it will get better, and it doesn't, you know.
no,
So I think that's contributed to my success, where I've worked at, and obviously you have that same skill, which is you see a problem, right, and you try to figure out as quickly as you can, what can I do to remedy this, right? I work with lawyers. Time is valuable. They're logging hours for clients all the time. So you disrupting a meeting, not necessarily because it's your fault, right? It's just could be the technology. What can you come up with at that moment that's going to be a workaround, right? So I want to give one example. If we could just go back for a quick second, and I want to leave it back to you. Is I don't know about the libraries in New York, but I know the libraries here are open, and you can rent out a space in the library for like a half hour, an hour. So I think that's would be my suggestion for people if they can't find a quiet place. Think back to the library. I used to go to the library as a kid all the time. I try to take my daughter as much as I can. So I think that would be, helpful to people to kind of do. Um, so yeah, you coming up with that last minute solution, but then you took it even further, right? Because they were still doing construction. So talk about that.
well, you know, once that happened, you know, I said, well, this I was able to troubleshoot that day,
Hmm.
uh, and then after that day finished, I said, okay, I need to troubleshoot for tomorrow because I know they're going to be back. So I started making phone calls, and I got in contact with. I have several sisters. I am lucky enough to have awesome sisters, and one of my sisters said, "Come to come to my home." And it's funny, they had just. It seems like everywhere there's construction going on because they had just finished doing construction outside her building the week before, so it was perfect. So now I ended up now what did I do? I was commuting again, but now I was commuting to her home, and I was doing my work. She took the she was doing all her work in the dining room area, and I was doing my work in the living room area, and that's how we were both able um, to go ahead and do our jobs. So in addition to troubleshooting immediately for that day, I had to then forecast my ability to do my class for the next day. So not just troubleshoot for today, troubleshoot for what may happen moving forward. And like I mentioned, okay, you got to make this whole transition as seamless as possible. Speak to the employer, because if I would have had an interview, I would probably have to say, they're doing construction outside. Is it okay if I do it out in the park? At least take a ride somewhere and do it somewhere quiet. There might be some birds chirping. Perhaps you might hear that. You might hit some kids running around, but it won't be as intrusive as drilling and banging as construction. So communication perhaps can be one key, or maybe you can say, we may be able to postpone this for 5 o'clock after the folks leave. There are companies that stay open past 5 o'clock, and perhaps the interview process can happen after that. But nothing happens without your communicating, without your exercising your resourcefulness, without your exercising your communication skills, without your exercising your customer service skills, because all of that comes to play when it comes to your troubleshooting these little hiccups.
Right.
All right. So now that you're going to this interview, one of the things that usually get to me, Master Roshi, is that when I'm interested in a person and I'm ready to make an offer,
Mm-hmm.
and I said, okay, let's do you have your references?
Mm-hmm.
And they say they don't, that they have to gather them. And now I have to wait 2-3 days for these folks to gather those references.
And it shows how unprepared they are.
And that shows how unprepared you are. So in fact, you should have done I don't understand why people go do interviews and then references. No, it's references and then interviews. That is the key formula. The last thing you want is a hiccup.
Right.
All right. So now you might come up with the references by Friday, or you might not. So what does that have to do with me? All right, because if you don't have them by Friday, I have to continue interviewing.
Right.
So and I just met you.
I want to pause you there for a moment, because I think there's two things that you said that really just make a big impact. So one thing that you did was you had a story there, about an issue that you faced. And when we're doing interviews, you said earlier, that high energy, that kind of language, kind of verbs is meaningless now. That story that you gave about what you did to remedy a problem is what you can use at the interview, right? And that's what employers are looking for. They're looking for examples of issues that you faced, whether by yourself or if you collaborated with a team. That's what they're looking for. They're looking for more stories like the ones that you gave. So to the audience, that's what I would tell you is remember or find instances of issues that you faced, right, that you can bring up at the interview and how you resolve those problems. The other thing is, I know it's kind of a minute point, but when you have instances of noise like that, and maybe there's nothing you can do about it. Maybe you're stuck somewhere, you have no place to go. Mute yourself as much as possible. Because we're virtual now, there's a lot of background noise, and we have to be attentive to that. So those are some things I would stress to people is make sure you have good amount of stories of, things that you've done at work, and try to minimize the noise that you have in the environment that you're in as much as possible. And then there was something else that you said that, just really hit me, man. And that was when you were talking about, you were talking about this thing where we do, right? And it's crazy. We try, I see so many people do this. They try to be shy. You know what I'm talking about? Like they feel like they need to accommodate the employer as much as possible, right? And no need to apologize, none of those things, and not say anything, right? It's okay to say something. If there's a problem with something that you're doing, let them know, because if you don't, they're going to assume that either everything is working or there's something wrong and you're not telling them. And that's the worst thing that you can do, is not communicate and tell people, hey, I'm having this issue, and let it slide, right? If you just let it slide, it's gonna hurt you, it's gonna hurt you even more in the end, right? By
Mhm.
not saying anything. And I've learned that in my career. I could give you tons of examples, but going back to the references that you said, making sure you have those ready. Yes, that's so important. Um, and having a go-to.
But let me also add something, because you put something in my head right now, Master Roshi, and when you said have stories,
Yes.
and many people say, I don't know what to talk about. I don't know what to say, and whatever the job description says, those look at the job descriptions as topics of conversations. Okay, if the job description talks about conflict resolution, guess what the questions are going to some of the questions are going to be around about. There's
Peace.
going to be around about conflict resolution.
Right, right.
So by you analyzing the job description and creating stories, not creating, remembering,
Mhm.
recollecting stories about those subject lines that are in the job descriptions, now you know exactly what they want to talk about. All right. So don't think that that you're going in there defenseless. The job description is your shield to protect yourself, to arm yourself with an arsenal of stories, of topics, of conversations that displays your qualities to a potential employer.
So let me ask you this, Sensei, because I think this is the problem that a lot of people are going to run into, is how many stories are too many stories, right? And how long is too long for a story, right? Because, you got a set amount of time for an interview, and you don't want to be the one just kind of like bulldozing, the other person. So in your experience, talk about numbers, talk about what do you think is too much sometimes, or too little, when it comes to that stuff.
I think it depends on the level of the title that you're going with.
Mhm.
Okay, the higher the title, I think the lengthier the story needs to be, because there needs to be a well-rounded, uh, concept for me to fully understand where you're coming from, and the decision-making process that you're going to be making a little bit more elaborate when it comes to having folks that are going to be following you. So I think it depends on the titles. But if you're going for an entry level position where you're transferring from a blue collar environment to a white collar environment, and you just finished taking some industry certifications as or a newly gained degree, uh, the stories I would probably say 1 to 3 minutes. Our attention span are low nowadays. After 3 minutes, after 2 3 minutes, I will probably say, what's the point?
Right.
Get to it. So I think that 1 2 3 minute tops, I would probably say, is the amount of time that you need in order to fully express your story. But you can do it very well in 1 minute, as long as it's coherent according to what you're talking about. Some people trying to get off the subject, and
Yes.
then we don't know what the point was, and then you stop talking. You're like, you never addressed my question. So you have to, and this is why sometimes it's good to take notes, because once we start talking, sometimes we go in a different direction.
So, Sensei,
So
that
not
that goes back to what you said before about structure, having a structure.
there you go. There you go. You have to have a structure. You have to have a strategy.
Mhm.
You can't, you're so one of the things that I like to say is that you might be the king fish in your pond, but now you're going to a bigger pond, and now there are sharks in that pond, sharks with expertise, sharks with knowledge of that bigger pond that you're asking to swim in. And I need to see that you have the strengths and the qualities to be able to swim in that pond, because my pond is not beautiful. My pond is beautiful, but my pond comes with chaos. It comes with irregularities. It comes with challenges to make it the beautiful thing that we have. So if you're unable to display those kind of qualities that are going to help me keep the pond as beautiful as it is, I see that you're not ready. It doesn't mean that you're a bad person. It really doesn't. It doesn't mean that you're a horrible person and you shouldn't work here. All it means is that maybe right now, at this point in your life, you're just not ready yet. And you need to go into another pond to continue to grow so that when you come to this one, you're ready for it. So always remember those key components. Give me one moment, please.
Sure. Okay, Sensei. So one of the things that I've noticed, in the world that we're living in right now, in terms of interview preparation and maybe interview strategies, I think they almost kind of go hand in hand, is the fact that we have all these tools available to us, right? And they're free and they're awesome. I remember when we used to be back in the office, and a lot of this stuff we had to do physically, obviously, right? Like using cameras and things. So now that we have Zoom, you can have virtual meetings with people, right? But not only that, you can record them, right? So what I want to throw back to you is the fact that since you have those tools, right? Are you using those tools? And the other question is, in terms of your students, right? In terms of the interview preparation, because you have the ability to record these meetings, right? Record their interviews. Like, what percentage of the students, are noticed that they need help, right? Like once, if you're able to do an interview with them and you can record it and they can watch it back, right? And then after they watch it back, how long after, do you maybe see an improvement at all? Like, do you see a percentage of those students improving because they're able to record their interviews and play it back? Because I think that's so key, man, to be able to get better is, you have to watch yourself. You have to look at your mannerisms, your language, your grammar and things like that, when you speak. So do you feel that any of that is being utilized? And if it is, do you feel like it's helping at all with those tools?
Yes and no. All right. Everyone realizes that they need help. No one wants to put the effort. Okay. So I have to force them. All right. I give them no choice. You're going to attend this mock interview. End of story. Oh my God, I don't know. Oh, I'm so scared. I don't care. You're going to do it. Because I know that the mock interview is a gateway to the actual interview.
Right.
But the fear factor gets in the way. And this is just, we're playing house right now. We're not even in the real deal. and already you're getting agitated. Some people actually call out sick the day off. And then they're unable to move forward. So, as I mentioned in my other podcast, we are the ones that get in the way. We think that, the competition is, I think I mentioned it in our last episode, the competition is not just your peer next to you. The competition is you. Because many of us, we get in the way of ourselves. We want to succeed, but we don't want to put that work into it. We live in a world that all we do is swipe left, swipe right, swipe up, swipe down, and we think life is just like that. And in life, the only way we can get good at something is by reps. And by seeing reps, it's a wonderful thing what happens, man. When I used to be a younger man, I used to go to many interviews. Master Roshi, I used to do about 4 interviews a week. And the beautiful thing about that is that a formula gets created. You begin to see patterns, and you get to see that it's the same questions over and over again for the particular industry. All right. So if you're going for, a nursing interview, most likely the same questions that they're going to ask you in this hospital or clinic it's going to be the same ones that are going to be asking you in another hospital or clinic, just mixing words around. So by you attending more and more and more, you get to already not manipulate, influence the interview. Even you can even get to the point where you can influence the interviewer to ask you a follow-up questions based on the answers that you provided, and you already have the perfect answer for the next follow-up question. So it almost becomes like an algorithm that you become familiar with. So I think that can be the key takeaway is by exercising and by doing more, you start to realize that everything becomes the same, and you actually become much better at interviewing. And so right now, so what we did just now is we gave you some basic tips on how to properly prepare for an interview. There's a whole lot of things, and I wish I could have more time to do this, because I can do this all day long. But what I want to do next week is I want to cover, in addition to prepping for the interview, I want to cover some interview strategies that can help folks launch themselves into a much brighter future.
Yeah, I have a lot of key things that I do, that I think has helped me, get to the point that I'm at. Sometimes they don't all work, so we gotta let people know, just because you follow this to the T doesn't mean it's always gonna work. Everybody's got their own little different style. You can't always predict what the employer is gonna want or do. You can only, like you said, prepare and strategize. That's the key thing. I think a lot of times one to me, I like how you phrased it. The way I would phrase it is like it's like a chess game, right? And you got to come in and know how to play, right? And practice. And the more you practice, the more chances you're gonna get to win the game, right? And I think that's what it's all about. So hopefully next week, that's what we're gonna try to help you do, is teach you how to win the game, how to win the interview. There's no guarantee that it's gonna happen, you know. But the more you practice, given the tools, they're free. Use them. That's what I would say is that people can take away from this for now. And then next week, we'll get into a lot more stuff. There's just so much to cover, and
Yes,
just not enough time.
and before we close for the day, I want to get into a little. I want to just touch a couple of more minutes on the references real quick, because now I mentioned references, that it's really important to have references prior to the interview, but also remember this, okay? The references are a reflection of who you are. It's not just professional references that the employer is asking for. They're also asking for personal references. And the personal references is to see the kind of people that you associate yourself with. All right. So remember when you were a child, right? And maybe your parents may have said, don't hang out with this person because people might think that you're just like that person. Okay. That's how references are too. So make sure that whoever you choose as your personal reference, it's someone that can carry themselves well and that can represent you as someone that has integrity, honor, and professionalism in your private life as well as in your professional life. So I wanted to make sure that we touch on that, because it's not just random folks that you're going to put in there and say great things about you. They need to be everything in the interview process. It needs to be strategic so that you can influence the employer into seeing you in the best of light. Remember, when you go to these interviews, they always say to be yourself. Be your best self. Be your Monday self. Do not be Saturday. So folks tend to go to those interviews thinking it's Saturday because they tell them to be themselves.
Sensei, I wanna touch real quick on that because I didn't get a chance to talk about references at all, but I'll keep it short. And the main thing I would stress is, make sure they're reliable. You want to put people on there. They're going to call back the recruiter, right? They're going to make themselves available to talk about you. Don't put people on there that are never going to get back to the recruiter. Their voicemails, they don't have a professional message. Don't put family members in there, your mom. I'm sure she's lovely and, she'll have wonderful things to say about you, but that's not the person you're supposed to put on there. And if you try to put somebody on there, that, just, you're trying to cheat, and you're trying to lie. If you have a savvy recruiter, they're going to find out. They're going to figure it out that, in no way, shape, or form or capacity, this person, worked with you and can talk about you. Just be honest. Just do the right thing, and good things will happen. Strong believer in karma. So just do the right thing. That's what I would say on that. And you don't want to get into trouble. It's not worth it for something. You get through the whole interview process, right? And you did fantastic, and then you mess it up with the references. Like, really, like at the end, you're gonna cut yourself short. Don't do it to yourself.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, Masaroshi, let's. I think that we had a great episode today. We're going to
So,
continue to touch base on this as we move forward. But think about this, audience. Okay, what are you doing? What are you doing to make the perfect package? If you're making mistakes, stop making them. All right. We stop sharing aspects about your personality that can hurt you professionally. Okay, social media is big now. Everything that we do, it gets recorded. Make sure that the things that get recorded are the things that display you as a professional, as someone that's kind, that has empathy, that has great customer service, that will be a great person to work with, as opposed to like taking you as a joke, not taking you seriously because you decided to display those qualities about yourself on social media. We are both good and bad. All right. There's nothing wrong with it. It's what makes us human. But let's display all the good and leave all the less desirable things about ourselves so that we can be judged the right way, everyone. So thank you so much, everyone. And I can't wait to do this again next week with you all.
Until next week, everybody. Thank you for listening, and we appreciate your support. And we'll talk to you then.
Fantastic. Thank you.